It's time for another edition of PRosé with Vicki Locke and Cindy Woolley from C2 Communications.
Welcome to PRosé.
Cheers, my friend.
Chicks talking about books we love with fantastic authors while sipping our favorite beverage. I'm Vicki Locke with Cindy Woolley, and I'm drinking a skinny margarita. How about you?
I am drinking some 19 Crimes.
Okay.
Little
Sticking
perfect.
with your red.
Sticking with my red. Yeah. I love it. It's deep, it's flavorful, and lower in sugar.
Well, before we get to our guest, our author, Robert, who I love, I saw an interesting statistic today. 56% of Americans cannot name an objective news source. That broke my heart as a journalism major. Do you think that, are you part of that 56%?
Oh, no. I'm a big proponent that if you want objective news, you've got to watch all news sources because I think they're all skewed. But, as a PR person, I know how the stories get slanted one way or the other. And, you really have to challenge yourself to get outside of what's comfortable when it comes to news.
I can see the old school people like myself where you had to get sources and you had to fact check. I see some of that going away in some organizations, but like you said, if you do some digging and you find out more information, because I do have a friend that was a reporter at a very reputable newspaper, and it got to the point where whatever was trending on social media, they just said, well, you need to do the story. And he said, but wait, I want to fact check. And they said, we don't care, we're getting beat. So that's a horrible thing.
I actually was reading a story this morning. There was a cop accused of causing a dog to get run over, and they released the dash cam video, and the article read, cop not responsible for God getting run over. Like they misspelled dog as God. And, I'm just seeing so many typos, and I know we're all human and we're all so pressed to get the news out fast and get things done quickly, but you really sacrifice a lot when you don't take the time to do the fact checking. But I don't know. I always talk to my daughter. I say, expand your sources. If you want to really hear both sides of the story, you've got to listen to both sides of the story and find that happy middle ground.
And you got to do digging and a lot of investigation and a lot of research. And speaking of somebody who does all of that, we are so excited about today's guest. He's one of the best-selling, award-winning, wildly admired authors of our time. His books are sold in 25 countries. They've been translated into 30 languages. From his espionage and thrillers like the Tracy Crosswhite series to the book that I just finished and absolutely love, The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell, to his latest book that's been released today. We can't wait to read it, and we can't wait for you to meet him. The new book is The World Played Chess, and we welcome Robert Dugoni to PRosé. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And I do have a mug, but it's 1:30 here, and I can't start drinking just yet. But I'll catch up to you later.
Do you drink when you write? Are you a coffee person?
I'm sure some people think I drink when I write, but no. I try to drink a lot of water. That I'm one of those kind of guys. Well, I'll try to do something healthy while I'm beating myself up at the computer terminal. Yeah, a little water, but that's about it. Thank you for the very nice introduction, by the way. I'm very humbled.
Well, we just love your work, and let's get right into it. The World Played Chess. First of all, explain the title, because this is a book about Vietnam, and kind of, I don't know how true it is, because you did work with 2 Vietnam vets, and just bring us into the story.
Sure. It's really a book about a shattering of illusions, and there's a Vietnam element in it, but really the Vietnam element is the MacGuffin in the story. It's about that moment that we all go through in our lives, male, female, old, young, but some of us have many of those moments where, you know, our bubble is burst, our illusions are burst, and we suddenly realize it's time to grow up. It's time to take our life into our own hands and create our own destinies. We realize we're not our parents. We have that profound moment that I've had a few years ago where I realized my children are not me. They have their own lives. They have their own destinies. They have their own, and that's really what the World Played Chess is about. It's about a man who is now middle-aged, and he has an 18-year-old son who is getting ready to go off to college, and he gets a package in the mail from a man he used to work with 40 years earlier when he was 18 years old, 1979. He worked on the construction site with 2 Vietnam veterans, and one of them, William, began to go through PTSD. And in the journal, in the package is William's journal of the year he spent in Vietnam. And he says to Vincent, the protagonist, all I ask is that you read it in the order that it was written so that you'll understand. And so it's really a story that takes place along 3 timelines. It's 1979 when Vincent is 18 years old, and his bubble is burst because he grows up in this lily white little community of Burlingame, California, where there's no crime, and you know, everything is lovely, and all he wants to do is, he's just graduated, he wants to drink beer with his buddies and you know, have fun. And he gets the education of a lifetime when he gets on this job site and realizes that not everybody is living in the same bubble or has had their bubble burst. And so it flips back and forth between that 1979. And, you know, I got to give credit to my son, Joe, who at the time was 23 and is now 25. But he's the one who said to me, I really think that, Dad, that this would have a profound impact if we knew if we could experience what William experienced that put him in this place. And that's really what I did then, is I did a tremendous amount of research in the backstage in the green room. We were talking about Ken Burns's documentary, which was certainly one of the things that I watched, and I probably read 15 firsthand accounts. And I talked to a couple of Vietnam vets who would talk to me. Not many Vietnam vets like to talk about Vietnam. To create this journal and to create this experience so that people would understand why William is the way that he is in 1979. The title is really it's kind of an interesting story. I was in Palm Springs and this 2 years ago, and I was talking to my friend Dale, and he said, what are you working on? And I told him just like I told you. And he said, oh, it's sort of like that saying, the world played chess while I played checkers. And I said, oh my God, that's exactly what it is. And you know, it's sometimes we're not even playing the same game. And that's what happens to Vincent. He gets on this job site, and he's naive, and he's simplistic, and he has no idea of the game that William and Todd have played and what they're going through. He's completely naive about it. So, you know, it's really that moment when we all get educated, you know, in one form or another.
Was there something in your life that burst your bubble for real?
That summer. Yeah, that summer when I did go to work with 2 Vietnam vets, and I realized really for the first time how blessed I had been. I had no worries at 18 years of age. I mean, what worries did I have? I had none. I went to this great grammar school and had these great friends, and I had 9 brothers and sisters, and none of us were addicted to drugs or alcohol or got in trouble with the law or, you know, anything like that. We had these wonderful Christmases and holidays, and everything was fantastic. And I go to work on this job, and I start to talk to these 2 men, and, you know, one was my boss, and began to realize, oh my Lord, I don't know anything. I mean, I am completely out of my element here when these guys start telling stories about what happened to them in the bush. And, you know, that was a very poignant moment in my life. And I was just getting ready to go off to college. So it was timely because I really I really realized that I was going to be going to school with people that were from all different walks of life, all different socioeconomic backgrounds, all different, geographic locations, and we were not going to be the same. And it was a real eye opener for me to experience that summer.
Did you think of a book at that time, or that was just you were way too young?
No, I didn't think of a book. I always wanted to write. I wanted to write since the 7th grade, but that was just one of those things that was sort of, we have, right? I'm going to be an actress. I'm going to be on stage. I'm going to be, in the movies. I knew I wanted to write, and it was a very real desire for me. But you don't know what you don't know, and I didn't know how little I knew. And I was just saying this morning to someone about it. I couldn't have written this book at 18, because I think we writers, we need to experience life in order to understand what the effect is. I mean, how many times in our lives have we had a situation where we thought, why is this happening to me? This is a horrible thing. Why is it happening to me? And it's only in time that we come to realize it was a blessing. It was the best thing that could have happened. And in fact, I opened the book with one line, I think, that kind of sums up what I'm talking about. I'll just say it real quickly. Vincent, in first person, he says, "A purpose I have learned is rarely found, but revealed." And what he means by that is sometimes it takes time for us to understand why things happened the way they happened. I can remember feeling really upset, I guess is the right word, when my father passed away when he was 76 from cancer. He had worked his whole life raising 10 kids and worked hard, and he finally had a chance to enjoy what he had done, and he got cancer. And he died. And I just thought that was so unfair. Why would God do that to him? And, I miss my dad daily, and I wish my dad was still here. But I also know that, it was important that my dad went before my mom. My dad would have been lost without my mom. And my mom, as much as she misses my dad, she's okay. But it took time. It took that time to get that understanding and to realize sometimes things don't happen the way we want them to happen, but sometimes they happen for the better than, if we are willing to really look at them.
Mm-hmm. You brought up that you have 10 kids, growing up with 10 kids. Now, how many are girls? Because in my opinion, you really can get into women's heads with your characters. I think you do an extraordinary job writing women's feelings.
Well, thank you. The first thing that I always tell people is, they say, how do you write from the perspective of a woman? And I always say, I don't try to, and I'm never going to try to, because I think that would be fatal. Because I think if I tried to describe, what it was like for a woman going through puberty or her first sexual experience or whatever the situation is, people would see through it. They'd be like, that's not, So I try to write from the perspective of a human being. And in the Tracy Crosswhite series, she's a human being that is deeply scarred because of what happened to her in her past life, in her early years. And that's a universal trait that transcends gender. It's something that impacts us all. At the same time, Vicki, you're 100% right. I had 4 sisters, and all 4 sisters were professionals. And I worked in a professional capacity as a lawyer with incredibly competent female lawyers, women. The women in my life, my mother, and other women in my life, my wife, are strong role models and professional women. And so I have tried to just pay attention to the things that I have learned from them in my life. My sisters raised me. My 2 oldest sisters raised me. When you're one of 10 kids and you're 5th, your mom can't do everything. So my sisters were like mothers to me, and so I have just tried to pay attention, and that's what we do as writers, right? We try to pay attention. We observe, we watch, we listen, and hopefully some of that has rubbed off on me.
I think there's that observing, watching, and listening, but the empathizing and the ability to see the world from different viewpoints and vantage points is what takes you from a writer to a really great writer. So I applaud you for that.
Well, thanks. I mean, people ask me a similar question about the Charles Jenkins series: is how do you write from the perspective of a 60-year-old African-American man? Well, Charles Jenkins was my law school roommate for 3 years, right? And I came from a very white town, and there were not many African Americans. I think there were none when I was going to grammar school, and in high school there might have been one or two. And again, so I had this naivete, and I'm in Los Angeles in the 80s with Charlie, and witnessed him getting pulled over by the police simply for walking down the street. Walking into a bar with him and him turning and saying, "We need to leave." And I'd say, "What are you talking about? We just got here." He said, "No, we need to leave. There's going to be a problem. The guys in the corner are going to cause a problem because I'm here." And just again, that was another moment in my life where that illusion was shattered, that you could be judged based on the color of your skin by people that didn't even know you. It was something that was I was not familiar with at all. But that was something that really stuck with me.
Okay, let's get into the extraordinary life of Sam Hell before we let you go, because time is, I could talk to you forever about this book, but I want to know if it's true that this book pretty much sat on a shelf for years, and then pretty much an act of divine intervention made it come to be. Is this true? It's
true. Yeah. Yeah, when I first wrote the novel, it was not in the condition that it's in now, and I've learned a very important lesson, which is never let anyone read something until it's finished. I mean, it allows you as a writer to be more free in what you write, and it allows you to be more honest and in what you write. You can always pull back, but I finished the novel, and at the time it was just not the right time for it. And so it did. It sat on my computer for a number of years. And then, when I started having success at Thomas and Mercer, my editor, Gracie Doyle, said to me, "What else do you have?" Because we'd gotten to know each other pretty well. And I did have a couple of other books, like The Seventh Canon, that had never been published. And I said, "Well, I have these novels, but I don't know that you'd be interested." "Yeah, let me just read them." And she read Sam Hell, and she said, "I love this book, but it's more literary. It needs to go to Lake Union. Would you mind if I gave it to Danielle Marshall to read?" And so I immediately called my agent, because I didn't know that's for me to say or not to say. That's what we have agents for. And my agent said, "Absolutely. We do work with Danielle. Let Danielle read it." And then I didn't hear from her. And I thought, "Oh, she hates it." Well, it turns out she was on vacation. And when she got back, she said, "Oh my God, this book spoke to me in so many ways. And let's talk." And so she got in touch with Meg Ruley, my agent, who has stuck by me through some unbelievable low points and high points in my career. And it was published.
And weren't you driving to Mass or something when you decided to finish this book?
One of the things that happened was, I had this idea for a novel, and but I didn't know what Sam wanted. I had written this novel about this kid that had ocular albinism, and I got that idea from a small article in the newspaper about this boy in Australia that was denied admittance to the Catholic school because he had red eyes, and they called him the devil boy. And I thought, oh my God, talk about irony. And so I had a character finally to go in this plot that I sort of had, and I put this together. But one of my agents, it was Rebecca Shearer was her name, and she said to me, "What does Sam want? What does he want? This is a sort of vignettes that aren't all tied together. We need to understand what Sam wants." And so I didn't know what Sam wanted. And so it sat, and I did. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was driving down the street to go to 5 o'clock mass. And I looked up, and the steeple of the church was sitting above the tree line. And I looked at the cross of the steeple of the church, and all of a sudden I just, it struck me like a bolt of lightning. It said, Sam wants to believe, dummy. He wants to believe. When his mother tells him, God gave you extraordinary eyes because you're going to lead an extraordinary life. He wants her to be right. Because he's just a kid that's getting picked on and bullied, and if he could understand that all of that was for a reason, and that reason is because he was going to have this extraordinary life, it would make it so much easier. So that's what he wants. And so I made a U-turn. I drove home and I wrote the prologue. My mother called it God's will. I often wondered how my mother knew God's will. and I wrote the prologue, and then I went through, and every scene was about what does Sam want? What does he want? And it just sort of tied the story together. It gave the story an anchor that people could hold on to. And that's why I think people identify with it so much, because the message in that story, it's not a story about religion. It's a story about hope. It's a story that says we all have the ability to lead extraordinary lives. It's just, how do you define an extraordinary life? And I think as we get older, we begin to realize that an extraordinary life is not how much money you make, or how many exotic places you travel to, or what kind of car you drive. An extraordinary life is love. It's having someone to love and having them love you. And when you have love in your life, for Sam, it was Mickey, and when you have love in your life, it's an extraordinary thing.
I know. I felt like I knew these characters so much, and I wanted to Mickey was just so cool and calm and waiting. And I'm like, this kid is so blind. Can Sam not see through those red eyes what's right in front of his face? I really got invested in your book, as you can tell.
Well, he couldn't. He couldn't. He was used to people turning him down and disappointing him, and so he couldn't see that she loved him. And he needed. That's exactly what he needed. He needed that veil lifted, so that he could see. And she was a great character. God, I loved her. I just loved her. I just thought, man, if I could ever write another character like that, and I don't know where she came from. People have asked me, did you have a Mickey in your life? And I say, no, but I wish I had. Growing up, it would have been wonderful to have a girl that was my friend and who I could talk to openly and honestly, because you can't talk to your guy friends that way, right?
You couldn't talk to your sisters?
Well, no. That was not on some subjects,
Okay.
And I really didn't find my Mickey until I found my wife, and then I realized that my wife loved me for who I am. She loves me for who I am, and that's when I realized who Mickey really is.
That's beautiful. Is there a theme that you would love for people to take away from your books? A common theme from?
Well, definitely Sam Hell and The World Played Chess. I think the common theme is that we're all going to go through difficult times in our lives. We're all going to go through dark times in our lives. We're going to have those moments where we just can't rationalize what is happening to us or why. But we have to have faith, and we have to have hope that it's going to be okay, that we will get through these difficult times, and that we can lead extraordinary lives. And, for some of us, it's the loss of somebody we love deeply. For others of us, it's disappointments that we experience and go through. I talked a little bit about losing my dad, and my mom is a 2-time cancer survivor. And, why does a woman that, has given so much to God, have to go through that trials and tribulations? And we just have to trust. We have to have hope, and we have to trust. When I was speaking to the woman that is interested in Sam becoming a movie, she said to me, this is exactly what she said. She said, it's not a book about religion. It's a book about hope. And it's really a perfect moment in history where, given what's going on between COVID and going on in the Middle East and all these other places, that the world needs hope. And that's what this book is about. It's about hope, that we will get through these times and we will be okay. And that's what I hope people would take away from this. Tracy Crosswhite is very similar. She had an absolutely beautiful, bucolic childhood, interrupted by a crime that led to her sister's death. And she had to find that place inside her that told her, there's hope. It's okay. Things will be okay. And I will get through this. And I just think that's a universal human trait for all of us.
Is that what keeps you going? Because I would think, especially after Sam Hell, like, okay, I won the Super Bowl. This book is just amazing. Like, how do you compete with that? How do you do one better? Which I'm sure you're hoping the World Play Chess is going to do exactly that. But is that what keeps you going? You just hopeful that I can outdo myself again and again, or just that there are so many more stories to be told about hope?
Yeah, I don't try to outdo myself. I really don't. I love to tell stories. I mean, truly, it's what I love to do. During COVID, I figured out that during I think the 2-year span, I'm going to have 6 books and 1 short story come out. And it's because I got up every morning and I came into my office and I found refuge in telling stories. And it's really what I love to do. I can't think of anything else I want to do. So, and I also consider it a blessing. I consider it a blessing that I found what I can do, and that I have the opportunity to do it, because I think there are a lot of extremely talented people out there who don't get to do what they want to do because of familial commitments or other factors have happened in their life. So I'm grateful every day. And how do I repay that gratefulness? I write the next book. I once saw an interview with Stephen King, and he said something kind of similar, where he just said, this is what I do. This is what I was born to do. So I'm just grateful that I get to do it.
Do you have time to read at all yourself? Because I was wondering if there's any book that you've read this year or last year, or if you've had any time to pick up a book and say, wow, this has moved me, other than your own.
Yeah, no, I've been asked. I get asked to read a lot of books now, but I get asked to read books for blurbs, and that's a little bit different. But I read Kristen Hanna's book, The Great Alone, recently, and I read it because it's got a Vietnam vet in it, and it was one of those books that was so deeply moving, and I felt like I really knew the character. I knew who the character was. I'm trying to find another one because I can't pull the name up. Written by Steve Concoli, and for whatever reason, it's not showing up on here. But I read as much as I can, and it's funny. I like reading. I like reading books about people, stories about people. I'm not being a mystery and a thriller writer. I think I kind of move away from that a little bit in my reading, because I just want something different than what I do all day long, Mm-hmm. But I read a lot of Stephen King. I don't like the horror stuff, so I don't read his horror. But when he comes out with things like The Green Mile and The Shawshank Redemption and 11/22/63, and those books were really profound for me. So I just like a good story. I once went through a list of the books I read. I read The Boston Girl. I read the book about the World War II women double agents, and the name is escaping me. I read When We Were Mermaids.
That was a great one.
And people are always like, really? You read that? I'm like, yeah. I mean, it's a good story. That's what I want to read. I want to read good stories. And so I don't really care what the genre is. I'll read chick lit. I'll read all romance, as long as it's a good story. That's really the most important thing to me.
Well, good. And just keep on keeping on because we love everything you do. The new book is The World Played Chess. I'm assuming you can get it anywhere.
Anywhere. Yeah, pretty much.
And thank you so much for being with us on PRosé today. We just are so happy to have you, and it's just been an honor.
Oh, no, my honor, really. Thank you. It's been a privilege, and I'm always, as I said in the green room, I'm always humbled when I get a chance to talk about my work. So this was terrific, and I appreciate you having you both of you. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Well, cheers to you and your water.
Cheers.
Join us next week for another edition of PRosé with Vicki Locke and Cindy Woolley from C2 Communications.